Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to set the stage and to introduce our next keynote. Our next keynote will look at the power of analytics and the evidence of analytics in use. And as we have seen throughout this conference, analytics is shifting our way of thinking about how we address the problems we're facing in healthcare. And we are all focused on how to create value from data so that we can drive real change. And I think we all hear from CEOs across various industries, and certainly even from healthcare private sector, people speak of analytics as a powerful way to create competitive advantage in business. So I guess the question is, can we do this in healthcare? Is this the sacred social space where we shouldn't talk about competitive advantage, or is it the time to start doing that? Perhaps it's about creating an environment of innovation within the healthcare sector. What we do know is that our provincial healthcare spending for a lot of jurisdictions is about 50% of our total provincial budgets. And so we need to use analytics to identify that competitive advantage that exists within our own healthcare systems, and we need to action it to improve population health, to find efficiencies, and to reduce costs. I think that is the value proposition that we have before us. And we need to use this competitive advantage, not to compete with each other, although benchmarking in a pan-Canadian perspective is not a bad thing, and I think it keeps us agile, but perhaps to outperform our own healthcare system personal best. The issue is not necessarily the data, or the technology, or the skill sets required to use the data, although I think we have to continue that evolution as well. I think once we have the insights from the analytics, it's really about what we're going to do with it. And I think we have to actually figure out how we're going to start actioning. Like Nova Scotia and other jurisdictions, we're all very data rich. And in the conversation we just came from around EMR data, we've had data for years, and certainly there's been huge strides in improving the use of that data and trying to make sense of it so that we can action it. But we're also in a world where data sources are growing exponentially. Sensor data, telemetry, images, video, social media, you name it. And so, we have a lot to get our hands around in order to actually start taking and extracting value from this data. Because our government spending in healthcare is not sustainable, we really need to do things different. And so the different data sets can be leveraged to provide additional insights and enable better informed decisions. I think we're looking for that innovation. We're looking to enable rapid value delivery. And that will require the bridge from analytics to insights to action to actual change. And I think this is a complex task that we have ahead of us. And it will require the candor and the courage to make the decisions that need to be made so that we can move into that future state. So one of the intents of this particular meeting and this particular session is to really showcase analytics in action, to inspire us and to leave us wanting more. Our next speaker is an innovator who will demonstrate evidence of analytics in action and in use. He will share his insights, his lessons learned about performance analytics in injury prevention, sporting and human performance improvement, as well as health and wellness. Travis is a natural storyteller, and he will share how he got started, what he's learned, perhaps some of the challenges he's faced along the way, and I'm very interested in some of the new areas that he's exploring as well. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Travis McDonough, CEO and founder of Kinduct Technologies. He has a passion for sports and has built a career out of helping people achieve their physical best. He comes from a competitive environment through boxing and tennis, and he's been able to draw this into his own experience within his own industry. He's a healthcare practitioner. He has started a series of health and wellness clinics designed to obtain optimal health for patients. And he's worked with some of the leading athletic clubs and sporting organizations developing high-performance training programs, injury prevention strategies that optimize athletic success. I think what I'd like to do at this point is really just turn things over to Travis and let him tell his story and the journey he's been on. And we can certainly have the opportunity afterwards to ask some questions. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much to Christine for the introduction, to Kai High and Canada Infoway for setting the table and stage here today. Really appreciate the invite and the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we're doing I do have to apologize up front. Although I like to tell a story, I'm not a great public speaker and generally hide behind the digital assets of the much more intelligent people in our company that they produce. Also, I do self-confess I haven't had as much time to prepare as I would have liked. We had a big milestone achievement in our company yesterday. A big announcement will come out about that in the upcoming weeks. But again, it's a great opportunity, and I'm humbled and appreciative again of this opportunity. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our story, our entrepreneurial story that is really about innovation and persistence and getting punched in the face too repeatedly from different obstacles that have been put in front of us. But I'm going to focus primarily at the start of what we're doing in the world of human performance. But the backdrop here is that all of this stuff that we're doing in human performance, we can apply and cross-pollinate into the world of healthcare. And although we've got 12 to 13 large research projects germinating data on our measurable impact in the healthcare world, we've had to sort of pivot and move into the world of human performance where there's much quicker procurement cycles and the ability to monetize our technology and more of the innovative petri dish of professional sport. So yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our shifting strategies and the requirement to be agile and shift our philosophies in the markets that we're in. Give you an overview of the platform that we've developed and how it's bringing value in the different allied health domains, and then talk to you about the challenges, because I think that's important for us to look at. I might start again with talking about the value we bring in again in the world of human performance, and maybe start with the presentation I gave at Dodger Stadium back in November in front of some leading leading professional sport organizations and teams from around the world. But really, I guess it starts with the awful feeling of watching a fan go down, watching an athlete go down with a significant injury. And as bad as it is for a fan, imagine what it feels like for the player whose livelihood depends on this, or his teammates, or the organization who's invested millions of dollars in the player's welfare, or the league who literally spends over $1 billion in MLB and NBA trying to prevent injuries and actually managing soft tissue injuries predominantly in the lower limb. And this has really created the gestation of an entire industry around player welfare. We all have read about these ancillary tracking devices and data elicitation technologies that, again, are creating data on an athlete to give us insight in their capabilities, their liabilities, and really their opportunities. Unfortunately, this industry has failed. And the reason that it's failed to live up to expectations is for two reasons. One, all the data that is being elicited from these devices in a siloed, separate, segregated, disparate position. They're all over the place. And they're not in the place they should be, which is in one location where you can understand how those data points intersect. And second of all the data that is being generated is completely disconnected to the output of programs, recommendations, and interventions. So there's this seismic gap between the data that's being created and, again, the programs that can lead to better outcomes. And that's where our technology has sort of bridged that gap. And we like to say in the world of human performance, we've created the most advanced platform to address those issues. So what do we do? Well, three things better than anybody we feel in the world of human performance. And it starts with data collection. So what we're doing is we're pulling in all this information from disparate and segregated and siloed sources. So heart rate monitors and GPS tracking systems and force plate information and fitness testing data, electronic medical records, functional movement system information. We pull it all into our platform where we coagulate all this data. We stack the data, we visually depict it, And then we can understand, again, the trends and the patterns and the relationships between these data points that have never been in the one location before. And from there, probably the most important part of our whole platform is that this data drives the tools, the interventions, the recommendations that ultimately get better results. And I'll talk to you about some of those tools and applications in a few minutes. But to show you how quick this world of professional sport moves, we only launched this platform in the world of sports about 18 months ago. And since we've launched that particular platform called our Athlete Management System, we have over 80 professional sporting organizations using the tool right now to do two things: reduce injuries and to win more games. And we're very happy to say that every team last season that used the platform through the duration of the season saw an improved winning percentage and saw a drastic reduction in preventable injuries. And when I talk about preventable injuries, I'm not talking about contact injuries. I'm talking about lower limb injuries that did not occur with some form of an impact. And so how have we had success, and what does that success look like? First and foremost, again, because we pull all the data into this one coagulation system, we've been able to unearth these relationships between data points that have never been seen before in the industry. In fact, we have around 70 emerging related metrics that we've just discovered in the platform. So some examples include in the world of professional hockey, because we pull in real-time statistics feeds and fitness tests, we've been able to make a correlation between grip strength, as elicited by a dynamometer, and shots on goal. More shots on goal, more goals scored, more games won. And this has had significant influence in the recruitment of athletes at a younger level, and also on programming related to strength and conditioning to get the athletes to perform at their best. We help improve performance. And how do we do that? Well, an example there is we've got a subjective sleep track mechanism that our NBA athletes record how they feel they slept the night before. And we have found that once they drop below a certain threshold, there's been a statistically significant reduction in free throw percentage, not the next day, but 2 days after that reduced sleep score. And that has major impacts on performance and making sure you're getting your athlete to bed at the right time and travel, all those sorts of things. In fact, we worked with the NBA to design their schedule for this particular season. It's completely different from last season. So we feel great about that. And we help avoid injury. So our machine learning engine and predictive analytics has been able to identify key risk indicators, such as an athlete's inability to slow down, known as deceleration, to their increased predilection to developing a soft tissue lower limb injury, such as an ACL tear, an Achilles rupture, hamstring injuries, again, et cetera, et cetera. And if a pattern, a trend, a relationship is emerging, we can step in and send an alert, a trigger, a notification to someone inside the circle of care of that particular athlete to intervene before the problem occurs in the first place. So again, we're really proud of the fact that not one team that we worked with had an ACL tear or an Achilles rupture, which is potentially a career-ending injury. So we're saving millions and millions of dollars. So you can see the immediate impact of the tool. And really, this is an example of where we're looking at data from the past and the present to predict the probabilities of something happening in the future, and again, stopping it and making a difference. So what happens if we're detecting these? Well, we've built, again, a plethora of features and functionalities that can actually have call to action influence. And for example, we built the world's largest library of 3D medical animations that depict various conditions. And why? Well, because an athlete that knows why tends to comply, and the research supports that. We tend to bamboozle athletes or patients with academic minutia and medical nomenclature that confuses rather than empowers, and we've got a vehicle that can push to an athlete sort of what could be in front of them, or if they have an injury, why it's important to stick to a rehabilitative or intervention program. We also have an enormous database of scientifically driven and very impressive exercise library ranging everything from rehabilitation to high performance. But much more important than the volume of these of the exercise program is the assemblance and specificity of the program that is largely determined by the input of information that is pulled into our platform from either subjective or objective measures. And this has never been done before in the industry. And this means, again, that the sets and the reps and the frequencies and durations and intensities of a program are catered not just off a whim, but off evidence and data that is being consumed on the backside of the platform. So who can use the tool inside an organization? Well, everyone. That's the great thing about it. It's permission-based. So based on who you are inside the hierarchy of an organization, you get access points to the different programming, the different features, the different functionalities. So we sort of provide the right data at the right time to the right people in the right environment with the right format to get the best results. And this is a very similar model as the healthcare world, where at the epicenter of it all is the player or really the athlete. And what we sort of figured out is we started to sell the platform to the owners of the teams, almost to create this inherent accountability. Then it went to the managers, and then we started to sell to the coaches. And then we started to do some league-wide deals, and we have some of those pending. But what started to happen over the last few months is we've been approached by some of the biggest and best athletes and their agents to say, hey, we want our players to own the data, to have access to data, to harness the data themselves to drive the best outcomes possible. And they should be the owners of their particular data. So there's a lot of cross-pollination and similarities between this market and other markets in the healthcare world. So we've got as a company, and this isn't to impress you, it's to impress upon the fact that all of our growth has happened outside of healthcare. And I'll address that in a little while, but the barometer of success for a technology company is the growth rate, and in particular the annual recurrent revenue. In the healthcare model right now, you have to live on the rations of a research project or a pilot or a grant, and that is not going to make it sustainable for a healthcare entrepreneur or company. It's not enticing enough, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But we've got this enormous user base, hundreds of thousands of users in fitness and military and sport and healthcare that's allowing our machine learning engine to mature and improve each and every day. And again, we're learning all of those sorts of things and again, applying it to the world of healthcare. Here's the people that make it happen. Again, it's easy for me to get up here and talk, and I'd be nothing but a pontificator if it wasn't for the great group of people who are behind the scenes, who are actually manifesting the vision and listening to our clients in the industry about what we need to do to make a significant impact. I think here I'd like to show you that this is sort of our circuitous journey through the world of health and wellness and human performance. We started in the world of healthcare, and because of the long cycles, we sort of pivoted and got into the world of fitness and military, and I'll show you some examples in sport. And what we did through this is we started to build a platform. And this platform, visualize it as a large technological operating system that we can house the furniture and wallpaper of different groups, whether it's a cardiac hospital or an orthopedic research group or a professional sporting organization or a military group. There's similar consistent requirements and values that we support, and it starts with the onboarding of an athlete or a patient, the assessment, a research-based assessment, the delivery of program based on that assessment, the monitoring, the ongoing monitoring, and the measurement. Is this working? Is this not working? And so we figured out that it's really the same across all these different industries, but there's an enormous ability to cross-pollinate these things. And what's starting to happen is if we were to overlap these industries with the ring, the center core is growing larger and larger and larger. So healthcare's embracing performance on the continuum, and performance is embracing healthcare. And there's this neat sweet spot that's starting to again evolve and grow significantly. Here's just an example of the teams that have the least amount of injuries are winning the most games. It's no secret that the Golden State Warriors, who we're very proud to work with, they are on fire. They won last year. They have a record-setting pace this year, and it's because they're embracing technology better than anybody in the industry. And you can again see here in the world of hockey what's happening as well. I think what I'd like to do now is move quickly over to do some, maybe some actual demonstration of some of our tools and functionalities and applications, and just show you a little bit about, again, where we started. But I started as a healthcare practitioner and owned and operated a network of multidisciplinary healthcare clinics, again, that offered a plethora of services in the physical medicine industry. And I had a flagrant impetuosity as a kid, which is just another fancy word for attention deficit. And I struggled to learn concepts, so I spent 9 years of university drawing out concepts and images so I could learn. So when I went into private practice, and I instantly saw the disconnect between what was told to the patients to what was understood. There was this enormous departure of understanding. So I thought there has to be, the average patient through statistics retains about 7% of information delivered the traditional way, verbal or text-based, in one ear, out the other. And again, that departure of understanding is largely responsible for poor outcomes and bad adherence to a treatment plan and high levels of dissatisfaction. And it's inherent in our system. If we don't understand what's wrong with us, it reinforces the culture of you need to have the physician close to you in order to solve all your problems. So I was very passionate about transferring knowledge in a way that again, engaged and empowered. So I leveraged the powers of 3D medical animation to push knowledge to a patient so they'd have a higher level of understanding and to use the graphical depiction capabilities of sort of rich digital media. So we put these on a platform where the sort of 45 plus therapists could use to push information to their users and their patients to again drive better results. And we realized quickly that, hey, it shouldn't just stop by pushing them, hey, here's what's wrong with you. It also should show them, hey, here's the intervention that's in front of you that you are going to need to do. So clinicians love this because of the informed consent capabilities, and patients loved it because they could share it with loved ones and they could finally understand what was in front of them. So instead of it being like a smoke screen and mirrors, what's next? Again, there was that full compute. And we even started to think outside the box and say, how can we really transfer knowledge through media that delivers information on kind of complex physiological phenomena or concepts in the body. Here's an example of sort of a acceleration, deceleration injury. Shows the musculoligamentous and skeletal damage inside the neck and the brain of someone who gets their bell rung, which is what we used to call it back in the early days. But you can see the power of being able to digitize this stuff, and it almost turned on a light inside the patient. So what we also realized quickly is that we've captured the patient's attention. So it's our opportunity to also say, guess what? We're going to break the shackles of a traditional bricks and mortar environment of a hospital or a physical therapy session and say, hey, here's your homework. You don't need to come back for 27 visits. We're pushing this information to you so you know, again, exactly what you need to do in the confines of your own home. There's a bit of a shift of onus and responsibility back on the patient themselves. So sort of started to break the traditional model. And again, developed thousands and thousands of ICD-10 driven or 9 or 10 driven rehabilitative exercises. So it was sort of like, A, here's what's wrong with you. B, here's the intervention in front of you. 3, here's what you can do. Here's your homework. And guess what? You need to start taking responsibility for your own care and not leave it up to the physician only. But what started to happen with us is we kind of quickly realized that all we were was a content company. And if we didn't go back to basics and be a technology company and pull in the rich digital media into a much more larger technology infrastructure, again, we'd be roadside carnage in a hurry. And again, so maybe let me go into, this is where I'm going to need to leverage my, my colleague here, Alan. Alan, can I just escape here to get to some of the demo stuff? Yeah. So what we did is we again moved into the world of not immediately into healthcare, again, because we saw some significant challenges in healthcare. So we went into the world of fitness. And what we did is we had some certain fundamental technical tenets that we wanted to apply, knowing that we were going to go back into the healthcare world. Number one, we wanted to make sure we had an operating system that could not just push information, but could pull information back from the user to extrapolate valuable knowledge about what they want to hear and see. Two, we wanted to make sure that when we got that information, we could quickly graphically depict it and analyze it and make sense of it. So we spent a lot of money developing infrastructure inside the platform, you know, that was based around predictive analytics and machine learning. Three, we wanted the ability to integrate with electronic medical record companies and pass information back and forth in a very secure manner. So we spent a lot of time on the HIPAA compliancy and have partnered with one of the Fortune 100 companies to make sure that our security settings are bulletproof. You know, 3 or 4, we wanted to make sure it was permission-based. So again, people could get different access points based on the hierarchy of who they are inside an organization. So, you know, we really worked hard on that. And again, the low-hanging fruit for us, you know, where there was quick and easy procurement cycles, was, you know, and I'll just sort of bring up a couple examples, was fitness. And we started to develop these very easy to use algorithms. And I'm sort of showing you the administration panel, but where fitness enthusiasts could click on everything from what their goal is to their levels to the equipment they had. And it would take from our, you know, enormous database of exercises and deliver them a workout program that allowed them to have a roadmap of understanding and execute a plan to drive better health results. And so each and every day a new program would get delivered to them in an environment that they could use in sort of a satellite location. We have tracking mechanisms that can monitor those things. You know, we moved into developing content in the world of nutrition so people could, again, know exactly what they should eat in certain, you know, meal establishments to drive the best informed knowledge of what they should eat and how much they should eat, and even go down to really every last morsel of food based on what it is that they're trying to achieve, whether they have a particular condition or whether they just want to lead a healthier lifestyle. So we have about 60,000 nutritional plans that, again, are linked to their goals, complete with meal preparatory explanations and sync to grocery carts. So it's a pretty neat way to deliver all this information. So we sort of honed our ability to create more content and get user feedback in the world of fitness. We quickly pivoted in the world of military, where this is where we sort of cut our teeth in the world of data and analytics. And we ingested 10 years of historical fitness testing data on the military troops and started to draw correlations between their inability to execute certain fundamental movement skills to the increased predilection to developing lower limb injury. So if you couldn't do a lateral plank for more than 30 seconds, the chances of developing IT band syndrome or having a hip pathology was exponential. Or if you didn't have more than 10 degrees of dorsiflexion in your foot, you know, the chances of developing an Achilles tendinopathy or shin splints would again go through the roof. So this is where we really started to incubate data and start to take data and make meaningful interpretation of the data, you know, to make a meaningful difference. And on the performance side, I don't want to get into all the bells and whistles and deep, intricate components of it, because I could spend 2 hours alone just working on this particular area. But really, this is become the central nervous system for an athlete and teams, where all of their data, again, is coalesced into one particular area. It's culminated on their easy-to-use dashboard, where we've got minimal cognitive lift, you know, and sort of aesthetically pleasing tabs. And, you know, all they have to do is click on a metric, and that metric instantly gets depicted underneath, where it can be represented and interpreted, and you can dive deeper. This is where, again, exercise programs get assembled and configured based on information that has been pulled into the system. So it's been a great opportunity for people to start to now deliver a program and measure its results, whether it's performance or whether it's rehabilitation. So a lot of neat stuff there. The assessment side, we've partnered, which has been part of our business strategy, with industry leaders in the world of physical medicine. So we've got fundamental movement skills assessments that kick out particular scores and particular reports based on limitations, liabilities, and capabilities of an athlete. And right from that exact spot, you can leverage research-based programming. So it pumps out a video-based program to give you the exact roadmap of what you need to do to drive better results. In here we've got, again, a whole fleet of rehabilitative tools, and this is where we use our animation capabilities and all those sorts of things. But at the epicenter, again, or the viscera of this particular platform is the data and analytics section, where we're really starting to understand data and what data matters. So we've spent a lot of time on depicting the data and doing it in a way. It's almost like having Tableau on steroids right inside the guts of our platform. So, again, whether you're looking at fatigue index and, the increase in subjective stress, or percentage body fat and how it leads to a reduction in cardiac output, or, whatever it might be, we're finally able to detect the metrics that matter. And we're very proud to say in some of the pro sports leagues, we have created brand new metrics that are the barometer of success or injury. Examples include in the NBA, where no longer is it about your vertical jump or your 40-yard dash. It has more to do with things called mechanical intensity and physio load, which are really a reflection of the stops and starts or your cardio exertion. These are the precursors to determine injury. So we're sort of changing the game, and all of these findings in this innovative petri dish of sport, we are starting to apply in the world of healthcare as we stack data on someone with chronic disease, or somebody in the world of sports medicine or NEOA or whatever it might be. But all the data, you can bookend it with triggers and notifications, so you can set, hey, if it's above this or below there, I want it to send a notification to the athletic trainer or the physical therapist or the physician or whoever it might be. Or the machine learning engine starts to take over and says, hey, you know what? Historically, over the past 3 years of ingesting this data, we've seen that once you hit here, there's a very high likelihood you're going to develop a particular pathological condition. So just earlier this week alone, one of the NBA stars who should be in the All-Star game isn't, because his team wasn't paying attention to some of this stuff, and one of our sports scientists inside said, this guy's going to get injured. And sure enough, the very next day, this high-profile athlete is on the sidelines right now. So this is how we're, again, able to draw really neat insight on again, leveraging data and what could be in front of some of these particular athletes. We have a unique scoring system in here that, again, culminates metrics under certain headings that provides an overall score to give you insight on how the person's game readiness is, or their performance, or, again, a potential or predisposition to injury. So I won't go into too much more there, and I have a hard time shutting up once I start going. So if I start to waffle or confabulate, please let me know. Give me the sign, Christine, if I start to drag. Okay. So I better show you quickly our healthcare platforms. Here's an example of something we're doing in the world of osteoarthritis, and on the prevention side, we partnered with people in our province, leaders like Mike Dunbar, to provide a patient engagement platform where we can pull in a diagnosis, and it provides an entire program for an individual, starting with, hey, here's what's wrong with you, so they can take ownership of their condition, to the surgical procedure in front of them, so they know, again, what interventions are around the corner, their rehabilitation, which is pre or post surgical, the frequently asked questions to reduce redundant patient visits. So all of these things that exist inside to arm the individual with the most knowledge to take action and to get best outcomes. Their anti-inflammatory nutrition plan, et cetera, et cetera. In healthcare, of course, we've got some very exciting projects going on, like the acceleration project with CPAC and Sunnybrook and UBC and Heart and Stroke Foundation. There's a group of Blue Cross, Capital Health, again, where we're engaging patients and arming them with tools for behavior change, et cetera, et cetera. So there's so much more I could talk about, so I should probably go back to my slides here and start to kind of get back on track. So let's see here if we can bring this up again. So I talked a little bit about the evolution, of our company, and what we decided to do strategically was try to provide a platform that appealed to both ends of the continuum, from cradle to grave, or from sick to professional athletes, and try to do everything in between. So of course our primary focus has been health prevention, so stopping people before they get into that pathological state. And so, our strategy has been to create this giant overarching technological operating system rather than just provide one product. And we've tried to be Switzerland. We've integrated with a lot of leading electronic medical record companies and wearable devices and other go-to-market partners. We've focused on our product, not on sales and marketing. Really, myself and my colleague at the back of the room, Jeff Johnson, are really the only two people who are focused on evangelizing the product from the front side. So there's a lot of things at the core of our strategy, which is also virtualizing programming and working with leaders in the respective allied health domains to drive best practice. We don't go into any market unless we've got an industry expert who can tell us what exactly we need. So that's fundamental to our success. And that can be anything from knowledge leaders to marketing capabilities to integrations. So I won't go into that. I've talked about how we collect data, we analyze it, and we take action leading to programs and interventions, and how we're partnering with all kinds of different groups. The difference between performance market and the healthcare market's pretty clear. They're early adopters. They're risk takers, and in healthcare, there's been a risk aversion for all in every level. I get this a lot. Well, hey, I don't think we should use exercise to deliver information to patients. What happens if they get hurt? And I say, what happens if we don't give them these exercise programs? What happens if we don't arm them with the nutrition and the education and the exercise they need to get better? What happens if they don't get proper blood flow to the brain, or their muscles atrophy? What about that? There's way more risk in that than taking action. So we need to change the narrative. We need to change the thinking. We need to embrace innovation and be willing to fail. Failure is what allows us to understand what is going to be, what's going to make us right, and figure out what works. So yeah, everybody's looking for a competitive differentiator because of the model. Anyways, I won't go into that. Here, this says it all. This is us over the past few years and our growth rate. And we're in a situation now where we're waiting for these healthcare cakes to come out of the oven, but we made the decision that we're not going to sit waiting, looking for it to bake. We've got to go into the other markets and prove it works and get ready to apply that to when the healthcare system catches up to us. And that's been a frustrating strategy for us, but that's what we have to do. We're way more passionate about empowering patients than helping teams win games, but this is the route we've had to take. We all know the unsustainable healthcare model. Let's not talk about that. You know a lot more about that than I do. But our healthcare platform is a patient-centric online platform for engagement. It's for monitoring, it's collaboration and support. And we're filling in the gaps between the practitioners that are, really managing someone from initial consult to assessment to surgical intervention to post. We really are providing the crutch along the way to arm them with the most information possible to get the best results. Talked about the framework or infrastructure of our tool. It's similar across the various the allied health domains and industries. We activate research-based assessment. We deliver programming and information. We monitor, and then we measure the impact of the tool, which is the only way we know if it actually has worked and made a difference. I think one of our biggest frustrations is, dealing in the healthcare space. We're like, hey, how has that program worked? What have been the outcomes? And they haven't been able to give us an answer. Well, now we can dip that barometer in the individual and monitor to know what's been successful and what has not been successful, and it has to start there. So, here's sort of an animated journey of how we provide frequently asked questions and educational material like 3D medical animations and meal plans, deep analytic capabilities that, again, I could spend an hour going through the predictive analytics and machine learning engine, but time is, of course, tight. One nugget to throw out there is we've got around the whole, hey, can use my data for research purposes by building in a front-end informed consent component. So every patient that gets access to our system has to either opt in or opt out to allow their data to be anonymized and allow us to use it for research purposes. And thankfully, a lot of people are like, yeah, if no one can see that it's linked to me, darn right, I want this to be used in an environment to make sure I get better and my kids get better. So it's been a really neat environment for us. Anyone who's interested to see about our mock project, our Movement of Capital Health, about how we provide a continuous environment for rehabilitation and education and remote monitoring and empowerment, love to tell you more about that. Of course, the future in this area is to get objective data. So, we partnered with gesturing technologies that can measure every movement of an individual and marry it to the last movement or tomorrow's movement and see where they are. But everything, again, from their weight to their blood pressure to, how many steps they take to their sleep, it's all being cultivated into our system. And then we're engaging them with a fleet of these patient engagement tools. Subjective analysis is, of course, also crucial, so we understand how the patient is feeling. And in pro sports, this has been huge for us. We've got these tracking systems that allow, just through these quick scrubber bars, for people to report how they're feeling, and that gets cross-referenced with all the objective information inside the platform. So we can, again, peel back the layers of the onion and understand at how some of these subjective measurements intercept or affect the objective measurements. We do have a fleet of assessments, questionnaires, surveys that you can build on the fly. You can leverage standard ones, or again, you can deliver ones on your own. So I'm probably starting to get out of time, am I? Okay, so just quickly, just a couple of the really quick, the overview of Capital Health's ortho mobility, which is really taking industry standard evidence on assessment, methodology, delivery of research-based programming, and the proper analytics. It's been a great project to work on, the acceleration project, the behavior change project as well. And then there's a whole series of other ones that we're baking data in that are very interesting. But I do think, just to close, I do have to throw this out there, that as an entrepreneur, this model in the healthcare system does not work. So you have to think about it from our perspective, and I just throw that out there. So once you come up with an idea that might make sense, you have to find a clinician. You go to the clinician and he said, that's neat, that's good. Now let's go find a researcher. So then you have to go find a researcher. Then you have to create a pilot. With that pilot, then you have to potentially look for a grant to allow that pilot to work. Then you have to integrate with another technology platform to deeply connect inside the system. Then you have to worry about security parameters. So you have to invest in the security of the data in the programming. Then, if you're lucky, you can then hopefully take it after years pass to the open market. But you're still surviving on grants and pilot projects, and there's no annual recurrent revenue. This is a nightmare for an entrepreneur, and it can't continue because companies like us are getting pushed out of this industry. We're still in it because we're passionate about it. We're lucky we've got a healthy balance sheet, but I know so many entrepreneurs who have walked from this space because of this model, and it's a travesty. So we have to change it. We could talk a lot about what we need to do, but I do think maybe we can leave it open for questions and answers. I'm happy to say that the province of Nova Scotia has done an amazing job over the past couple years at developing a process. They set the table for researchers and entrepreneurs and professionals and clinicians to sit down to work in harmony to figure out the right process or system to take an idea to monetization. So I know it's still a work in progress, but this is what needs to get done to make sure that we're attracting rather than repelling individuals in this market. So sorry, you stop me now because I'll keep going on here. Great. I think one thing I should talk about is a project that we're working on that we're extremely passionate about, that we feel has got to get the attention of the provinces and the country as a whole. And that's a project that it's called Canada Moves. And it's about assessing children starting in the ages of, or starting in the grades of 7 and 8, where we put them through 5 fundamental movement skills. And we distill the data on their abilities to execute these fundamental movement skills, and certain triggers or alerts can not only get sent back to whether it's the Olympic Committee on who are the outliers or the next Olympic greats, but much more importantly, it's cultivating data on kids that can't do certain fundamental movement skills and linking it to the predisposition to developing certain chronic diseases, such as type 2 diabetes, such as mental health illness, such as early OA and obesity. And there's an emerging body of evidence and research that are linking those two. So we've got a project that's starting in Nova Scotia with 10 schools. We're moving it hopefully across the country, going across the provinces, building this database of information on children so we can then provide what's next, which is the tools to allow them to improve their physical literacy, and in doing such should reduce the chances of chronic disease. So if anyone wants more information, we can tell you about that, but we do feel that it's one of the fundamental bedrocks for the whole philosophy around prevention of disease and health promotion. So, yeah.
Robin?
So first of all, congratulations on an incredibly innovative product and platform, I guess, is not just a product. I think it's fantastic. It really has and could play a huge role in the health of Canadians.
Appreciate it.
I guess my question is, what needs to be fixed? I hear you on the procurement thing. It's just incredibly frustrating. There are some experiments in Ontario on innovation procurement. But what needs to be fixed in your mind to actually solve this so that we actually have many more people like you actually producing things that will make a difference?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I don't think we know the answer to that question yet, but what I think would have been great from our side is if we knew the process. If we went in and we realized it's not a 8 months from inception of idea to monetization. People have to realize the long odyssey in front of them. I think that's first and foremost. 2, we need to point them to the process. There should be a table that you sit down at and say, hey, here's my idea. What do you think? And around that table should be clinicians and practitioners and hospital administrators and government officials and entrepreneurs who say, hey, this has got legs, or no, you're crazy. But almost like a version of the Dragon's Den up front, but it can put people out of their misery if it's not a great idea. But if it's a good idea, there's this systematic implementation process to walk you through that journey. And that's thankfully what I think our province is doing, and I'm not sure if it's happening in other provinces. I hope so. But I think from there, we need to shorten that journey because it's too long. We're now bearing the burden of the economic runway of all of that, the entrepreneur is. And that just can't happen. So there also potentially needs to be an umbilical cord between these healthcare ideas and economic development potentially inside a province. Because it's really not up to the province to fund early stage healthcare companies and technologies, but if there was a way to engage the economic development entity in the respective province or at the country level, that might be a great way too. And I think also there needs to be a vehicle. If something's working inside one province, there needs to be a conduit to scale it across other provinces and to support these things so there's no redundancies and there's people not reinventing the wheel. And again, these are just ideas that are coming to my head. I think the one thing too that we need to realize, and I'm coming at it from an entrepreneurial side, but a lot of our experience has been working with practitioners and clinicians. And I don't want to offend any practitioners or clinicians, but some of them have a pretty large ego. Some of them want to own the concept, the idea, and it's not a working, it doesn't work. It's hard. There needs to be the baton passed to engage entrepreneurs, and there needs to be this, again, this proper liaising system. I say to the clinicians we work, I'm not going to go out and do part-time knee surgery or cardiac cardiac heart valve replacement. And so that's what you're for. So let's work together to make the most inroads. And so again, figuring out that process is going to be important as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe this will be the last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot. A really fascinating presentation. I have to ask a statistical kind of question. There's an old adage in epidemiology that correlation is not causation. And you've done the predictive analytics, and I'm intrigued, for example, by the story you told of you didn't sleep well the night before, your basketball may not be bad the next day, but 2 days later, the presumed intervention is you're going to change the sleep 2 days before. But how do you know that was the real variable, the sleep, and there wasn't some unobserved confounder, to use the epidemiological jargon there? How do you know you've arrived at the right causal story?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I think the reason we sort of have is just from compiling all the data into the one location. And that's probably a question that could get answered more properly or more efficiently by a lot of our data scientists and the people who are developing the predictive analytic engine in our platform. But I think the only reason we're starting to know is by soaking in all this data and trying to, sift through and find the needle in the haystack, which is what we've been able to do. But we also understand our limitations as a small company, and that's why we have partnered with this giant Fortune 100 company to literally plunk on top of our system their incredibly detailed and sophisticated analytics engine to make ours even more robust. So I think as much as we know now, we're still in the embryonic stages, even in sport. But we've only been in this market for 18 months. But we're at the front. We're in the jungle with a machete, hacking through the jungle, clearing a path where no one has kind of gone before us. It's unlike a lot of other industries where there's a highway for us to move in between, to follow in their wake. So it's all new frontier, but those are the opportunities in front of pro sports or in healthcare.
So thank you very much, Travis, on behalf of the conference organizers and obviously the delegates in the room. Appreciate your insights into your experience and what we can do within healthcare, and kind of ending on the opportunity, value, and action theme that we've had going on. I think you've brought to life really some of these opportunities that potentially could be there for us. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.